Welcome to Control Alt AI, where we decode the future of AI one conversation at a time. I'm your host Aishwarya Srinivasan, a data scientist who started her journey as a software engineer before pursuing a master's in data science from Columbia University. Having worked at the forefront of AI innovation across Microsoft, Google, and IBM, I've developed a deep passion for teaching and sharing knowledge about AI's applications, challenges, and best practices with my community of over 5,000 followers on LinkedIn. Today, we are in for a treat as we have a candid conversation with Pritish Yuvraj, a senior ML engineer at Meta working on the Llama team. From his fascinating transition from software engineering to becoming a key player in one of today's most influential AI projects, Pritish brings unique insights into the world of large language models and open source AI development. And stay tuned, we have some really interesting surprise element that you don't want to miss. Get ready for an engaging discussion about the present and the future of AI technology as we explore the good, the bad, and everything in between. Thank you so much for joining us in today's podcast. You are the first guest for this podcast, so I'm super excited to host you here.
Thank you so much, Ashwarya. Really happy to be here and looking forward to answer your questions.
Pritish, you've had such an amazing career and you've been doing such amazing things at Meta, working on the Llama team. I'm sure it's such a inspiration to a lot of people. But what I wanted to start with today is who was your inspiration when you got started and how did that shape how you got here?
Yeah, so I had multiple people whom I got inspired from, and I would start taking the names from Steve Jobs, Bill Gates, Mark Zuckerberg himself. So yeah, the way it worked was like I followed their stories. I saw like how they came from almost nothing and how they made it big, right? And just try to like replicate that perfect machine learning, right? You learn from the data. So that's what I did. Again, I'm not nowhere near like Mark Zuckerberg, Bill Gates, or Steve Jobs, but I really am thankful for the opportunity they gave us. So always we should remember that in 1960s, right, computers were only available to very few people across the world. Like few big tech giants used to use computers, or at NASA used to use computers, but it was Steve Jobs' push to put computers in every single household, right? And then came internet, right? And then came the wave of iPhones and mobile phones. So as a computer software engineer or a machine learning engineer, you have so much to impact across the world, so many devices to reach out to because of these people who gave you the opportunity. So thankful, and yeah, just love learning about them more and more. Yeah.
That's amazing, Pritish. You actually hit the nail that it's so important on how tech has transitioned from what's there for technical people or like what's there for just builders to creators, right? Like I think that was the vision that even Steve Jobs had, that let's not just have personal computers or like the computers for just the builders or like just the high profile personas in the world, but let's make this a productivity tool for everybody out there. And that's the same wave that we're seeing right now with AI, where we're trying to democratize it, make sure that creative artists are able to use it, musicians are able to use it, uh, doctors are able to use it, and we're trying to like create that impact worldwide. So tell me about like your transition. Like you started off in the software engineering space, even at Meta. So what was your work like when it was when you were doing software engineering versus what made you transition into machine learning engineering, and what was that upskilling looking like for you?
Yeah, so just to like give us a bit more clarity, that my master's was already in very learning heavy background, but it was 2018 when I finished my graduation, right? And that time the wave of machine learning was not that big in big techs. Big techs still were a lot about like backend roles. Machine learning was picking up, but it did not pick up to the level we see right now. So just for opportunities and just trying things out new, I went and tried out software engineering roles initially at Meta. And after a while I realized no, machine learning is what I have been passionate about, and I switched back to it. But that doesn't mean that I haven't seen people who transition. In fact, I've mentored two people who transformed from software engineering to machine learning roles. So I would say the entry bar is not too high. the initial learning curve is not too high, right? Because of all these libraries we have right now, like from PyTorch or everything. The problem begins when you start debugging. That's when your skills from machine learning kicks in. And I feel machine learning is one field where you can just jump into, take some projects, right? L- just learning by doing, right? When I mentored, I've seen two people successfully transition from software engineering to machine learning. So the initial part, the initial 40%, right, it's easy to transform. The skill comes for the rest 60%. That's when you have to start studying about statistics, right, about NLP, machine learning, to gain the intuition why something is failing or why something would not converge, right? Study a bit about complex, like optimization, all these things, convex, concave curves. So these things come much later, but in a vanilla setting you probably will be fine using a normal machine learning model and just throwing data into.
So what I hear from you is that entry level is easy, but the growth is very much self-paced, and it depends on like how deep you want to go in like solving a particular problem, and how much of experimentation that you're willing to do on your own, right?
What helped me when I was entering is this course from Stanford, Intro to Machine Learning by Andrew Young. So it gives you a good understanding of what are you doing, right? So that can be a good starting point. But
Yeah.
beyond that, what I feel is it's all about doing projects. The more
Yeah.
projects you do in machine learning, the more you will fail and you see, okay, why something doesn't work, and that's when the intuition starts coming. So for
Yeah.
some weird reason, I at times I do say that machine learning is not just science; it's also an art,
Yeah.
right? And as you start moving more towards LLMs, it's more like a dark art. Not everyone has that. Like, it takes time to develop it, have intuitions of why something
Yeah.
is working. So yeah, it moves towards that direction. And the only best way to gain the art is just by doing it consistently. The
Yeah.
more you do, the more you fail, the more you learn machine learning.
Absolutely, 100%. I 100% agree with you on that. And I want to like learn about like, in your experience, right? Like, um, what you said is right. When we're thinking about machine learning space, there is a lot of things that are still, I feel, undiscovered from an application standpoint. Sure, machine learning algorithms or like the theoretical part has existed since like 1970s, 80s, but now that we are putting things in production, there is a lot of things that is um, unsaid, right? Like things where we are not able to resolve it because there are severe bottlenecks. One of the things I was reading about, I watched Feifei Li's 2024 TED Talk, and I had watched her previous TED Talk back in like 2015, I believe. And she was talking about ImageNet. She was talking about how she was one of the first people to identify that there is such a big gap in the data that's required to train these vision models, because you can for sure like keep fine tuning your model to a certain extent, but the model is going to learn from what it is seeing, right? Like
Yeah.
you cannot make a kid intelligent by just keeping them in a box and like not exposing them to new information. And same is the thing with machine learning models. You're trying to teach them something and you cannot teach them without providing with that information. So in the last maybe like 10 so years, the transition has significantly happened in a data centric AI approach. And I think one of the biggest spaces where that has impacted is how we have started building large language models or like large multimodal models, and data is one of the biggest backbones of it, and internet is probably one of the biggest factors why we have been able to do it what we're doing today. So what are like the challenges that you have faced in the large language model space, or like working with llama models, or just generally like working in this space?
Yeah, that's a good question. So data is definitely a bottleneck as of now, but we have to also see this, like take this approach maybe like more creatively. So the data as a bottleneck becomes because of our current loss functions, right? Our current loss functions require multiple data sets of same type for the model to learn. And if you have seen multiple podcasts by Jan Lee Kuhn and other like pioneers, they have strongly suggested that using big gradient descent is not the right approach. We have to think creatively and look for better algorithms where model learns things much faster. So JAPA is one of the models which came from Fair Lab and from Yanli Kuhn, which tries this approach. It's slightly different from transformers, but it learns much faster, right? And I think at some point we have to start thinking in those terms, that it's almost getting unfeasible to feed the entire data and expect the model to learn, right? And even if you see, like, there was a recent uh, case study where they saw that, I mean, even the scaling laws looks like they're kind of not holding true anymore. It's kind of getting flat, right? So there's only so much data you can feed in, right? So that's one thing we have to look into. And yeah, like, the one problem I've seen with this field is, if one method works, everybody in the field, industry or researchers, try to push for that one method and try to, like, perfect it as much as possible. The perfect proverb I have for this is that if the only tool you have is a hammer, the entire world is a nail, right? So you need to have multiple tools in your pocket. So yeah, like we have to stop this approach of just going after data, and yeah, like, doing the same loss function. It will give us short term gains, but it would not help us lead to AGI. This is not the right approach.
100%, like, echoing with what you're saying is that, if we keep rabbit holing on the same exact method that everybody else is following, we're not going to achieve different solutions. So 100% agree on that. And I think one of my favorite things, and I wanted to really talk to you about this, is open source initiatives, right? Like, there has been a lot of companies, a lot of researchers getting into the open source space versus a lot of people getting into the closed source and proprietary model building or like solutioning. Everybody has their own reason to do one or the other. But what are like some of the most impactful initiatives that you feel open source has like brought into the AI space?
Yeah, so the first thing is that training these models are very expensive, right? And if you see the closed source domain, what they're doing is creating monopolies. And that's why you need open source. Like, it's very hard for let's say an engineer sitting in Bangalore to train a model LLM from scratch. It's just too expensive, and it requires a lot of skill. Pre-training is very different than post-training and all these skills, right? So that's where open source comes in. Like, they bridge that gap. They give you an opportunity, right? If you don't have it, if you don't have this opportunity, then let's say if you have a course closed source model, it's hard for you to fine tune on those data sets. There can be possibility where you are giving your data sets to these companies, and then there are issues of privacy, right? But with open source, you can download these models on your laptop or on your GPU, personal GPU, and keep your data safe and fine tune from there. So I think, like, it does multiple things. First of all, it bridges the gap. It makes everyone on the same level playing field. And second thing is, yeah, like, it gives you the opportunity. And if you see, like, all the modern innovations in healthcare, in, let's say, in chemistry, right, with AI, it came from open source models, because it was much cheaper for these scientists or engineers to onboard to these new models, LLMs, and then try it in their field. But let's say if it is closed source, it's expensive, and there's so little what you can do. And so that hurts innovation at the same time. So it's multiple factors affecting.
Absolutely. I mean, like, imagine a world where even Transformers, the reason that we are here today is Transformers were open source. The reason we are here today is somebody decided to, like, open source Kubernetes. Like, the entire cloud infrastructure is built on top of that. So, definitely, like, it just opens up a lot bigger ecosystem. And I feel like, even from a company's perspective, when you are open sourcing a toolkit, you are sort of like creating a rush around yourself where everybody is interested to innovate around it, and
Mhm.
that just makes the pie bigger and bigger. So it's not that your slice of the pie is becoming smaller, rather like the
Yeah,
pie
exactly.
itself is becoming bigger and bigger.
And just to add to your point, I'm glad you said that transformers, the open sourcing of transformers led us here. There's one more thing to it. Open sourcing of internet led us here. So
Yeah,
transformers for the modeling and internet for the data, and then this
yeah,
magic of LLMs happened. So it's
yeah.
all from open source. And then there are a few companies who take open source transformers, who takes open source internet and make closed source models.
I think that's like the dynamics of how economics works around different spaces, because one of the things that I have seen is folks who are going behind open sourcing models, that is their moat that they're trying to achieve. They're not trying to pigeonhole that model for a specific business use case. versus a lot of the people that I'm seeing who are like sort of closed sourcing their solutions are fine tuned, refined models. Like they're just taking up one of the open source models and fine tuning it and refining it based on proprietary data. And that's becoming a solution because it's like very niche, or like, they see a business opportunity behind it. So that's the differentiation I'm seeing right now, especially when I'm seeing companies open sourcing their models versus businesses and startups picking up those models and like trying to create a business out of it.
and
Yeah,
and that's precisely the point. Like we want that. We want to
we want that. Yeah.
do these models, and then they can be like business out of it. That's how the economy can grow, as you said earlier.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I just wonder a world if we didn't have a lot of the tools that we have today. Like somebody decided to create Canva, somebody decided to like, create a lot of these video editing tools. Or I don't think I would have had the need or the interest to go deeper into video editing skills myself. Like it just makes my life so much more easier and so much more productive because somebody thought about doing this, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That's what the purpose of startups should be, to make people's life easier.
Yeah, absolutely. There are a lot of different kinds of solutions that we're seeing with AI or like generative AI. It's just coming in different forms, right? Like some of them are agentic AI, some of them are simple AI automation workflows, some of them are coming across from like a machine learning side, which is like more predictive analytics. So we are seeing that a lot, like both in terms of like user applications, which is for B2C, versus enterprise application, which improves company productivity or like internal logistics. So how do you think businesses which are non-software engineering, or like departments which are non-technical, versus people who are non-technical, how are they going to adopt these toolkits over the next 5 years? What are your predictions on that?
Yeah, I think like it's like a history repeating itself situation. So this was the exact same questions being asked to the world when first Steve Jobs was trying to push computers across the world. Like how will somebody who has never used computers start using it to like use Google Docs or spreadsheet? And the answer was people saw a value out of it, right? Even if somebody is not technical, let's say there's a store owner, the person saw a value of using spreadsheet on the computer than just having a manual kind of
Yeah,
spreadsheet, right? So they learned that and they saw a value out of it. This second wave happened around internet. There was a
yeah,
question, why should a small business like go on internet? There's no purpose. But then they saw that they got a better coverage. More people across the world were ordering their stuff, right? So it happened for the second time, and I think this is the third time when it's happening. And we might see an exact same pattern where people initially will think, okay, I'm not from computer science background. Maybe I'm a creator, right? Video
yeah,
creator. Why should I start using LLMs, multimodal LLMs, or AI? But the point is that if you start using these things, your productivity increases significantly,
yeah,
right? And your quality goes higher. You can make more videos, you can push more content. And that's true for every field. Like even editing becomes so easier. You have seen some the new models, right? Like movie gen from Meta.
yeah,
They have such easy video editing tools, sort of, from OpenAI. So that's the thing. Like you, if you want to be in this business, if you want to keep growing, these tools are here to help you. Whether
yeah,
you are a doctor, you can do so much as a human being. You can store so many memories, right? But with an LLM, imagine like how productive you are, how easily you can diagnose things. You can go through so
yeah,
many case studies so faster. So yeah, it's just like a third wave happening. It's third time,
yeah,
third time. Yeah.
absolutely. I absolutely agree to that. But one of the fears that I see a lot of people having is people who have been in the industry for like 10, 15 years, they find it very overwhelming. They feel that, we have been in this space for so long. How do I start pivoting towards something that's more machine learning, that's more AI? So what would your recommendation be for people who have been veterans in the industry, who have probably been doing tech or like non-tech and want to sort of pivot into the AI space, or at least like learn what's going on in this space?
Yeah. So first of all, I acknowledge what you are saying is happening. I acknowledge that they are veterans, people who have been in this industry for some time, and they do sometimes uh, feel uncomfortable seeing this race for LLMs, which can do coding, which can do other things as well. But my point is, it's not actually threatening you. So think of it more like a tool. right?
Yeah.
And 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 there are enough number of startups coming up right now in across Bay Area, across like the world, which are making these tools more and more accessible. For
Yeah.
example, let's take example 2 years back when LLMs just came, right? Very few developers had were using LLMs as a co-pilot, but now
Yeah.
almost every single uh, dev server like has a co-pilot installed to it. So most of these veterans are anyway using co-pilot or like using the LLMs for like auto code generation, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, so that's the thing, like it becomes so easy to enter these like these technologies that it's not a problem for them to onboard to it. And second thing is like, let's say machine learning, this is the perfect time to do machine learning. If you go on any LLM app, right, like ChatGPT or Meta AI, let's say you want to program a image classifier, you just type and it will give you a code in whatever language you want. If you want PyTorch, it will
Yeah.
give it to you. If you want Keras, it will give it to you. This is the best time. And if you have some questions, you can like prompt the model again and ask questions of why did you choose certain functions, or like what does some certain function do. So in my opinion, the learning curve right now, it's the easiest, it's not the steepest. It actually was much more steep before, right? So yeah, if you're really willing to enter this field, the barrier is low. That's my
Yeah.
point.
I kind of like agree to this. I started off, like thinking that it is definitely hard for people to grasp everything that's happening, right? Like there's been literally, like, I open my phone every single morning and there's like some 30, 40 notifications from like different applications or like, different newsletters that I'm following. So it just feels overwhelming. You're like, how do I start my day? Like I have so much to take in. Where do I start? Where do I stop? Because once you start reading something, it's it's a recursive process from there. Like you keep going from that link to another link to another link to another news article, and then that just goes forever. So it definitely can get overwhelming for somebody who's like not working directly in the space, where you're like, okay, am I missing out on something, right? And I think that's one of the points where I completely resonate with you, right? Like when I was starting off in my grad school or like during my undergrad, when we spoke about neural nets, it was all about like building it from scratch. Like we were writing activation functions for
Yeah,
each and every layer. We were like thinking about how many layers, how many neurons, like thinking
back
about what does the back propagation look like, right?
differentiation and then writing the back propagation like algorithm.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. But especially in the last few years, for sure, I have definitely not seen anybody do that unless it's for a college assignment, because you just have such amazing accelerators and like packages that help you do that. Like with one line of code or like less than that, and even some of the packages are like create auto nets. So like you don't have to do any of that manually, and that's the beauty of it, because it lets people focus on the problem or on the big ticket items and not worry about like reinventing the wheel when it comes to like machine learning models.
Yeah, and I just feel that this trend is going to continue, and the onboarding cost or the learning curve is going to become more and more plateaued going forward.
Yeah, I'm hoping the same. Like that's one of the pieces that I had been working on. Like how do I make AI more comprehensive to a lot of people? So my first guinea pig was my mom, to teach her how to use ChatGPT, to make her understand what she can do with this particular tool, and obviously the things that can go wrong, right? Like what are the parts that it can hallucinate.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I think I've seen that video of yours where you're teaching your mom ChatGPT. It's a really cute one. So kudos for that. And I'm also happy that you're spreading this technology like to generations beyond us, like above our generations, and
Yeah.
people who are not having like maybe like I don't know, maybe you taught your family in your own native language. So I'm also a big proponent of multilinguality. So hopefully when you teach your parents in India, you teach them in their native language. They do not
Yeah.
even use English for it.
Yeah, and I would want to like just learn more about like, how do you keep up with everything that's going on? Like what's your mantra on blocking away a lot of things that's coming that can overwhelm you, and like how do you focus on things that you know that you want to go deep
Yeah, so I think like even the previous question also, right? Like I acknowledge right now there is a information overloading going on, right? And there is so many platforms, like there is LinkedIn, there is like publications happening all the time, so many conferences happening, and people feel FOMO, that what if I don't go to this conference? What if I don't
Yeah.
read this blog post? Right. And that happens. So I would say that over the time, as human beings, we have to develop some kind of classifier for ourselves, which can classify, okay, this document, it's not that worth of my time, and this is really worth of my time. And what I do is I just skim through. So when I see multiple articles, I just skim through like the abstract part of it or the heading part of it. It gives me some idea like how relevant this is, how much it's going to help me, right? And you have to do this because right now there's so many information coming up,
Yeah.
but once you read it, right, you will find there is some sort of duplicacy into it as well, right? So
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
yeah,
or
so
different perspectives of for the same thing.
exactly, yeah. So when something is absolutely new, right, something absolutely creative and breaking all the boundaries, it becomes prevalent. Like you will see it everywhere. You will hear
Yeah,
it from people. So you will know, okay, this is something which you should focus your time on, right? But
yeah,
let's say if you get many notifications or you see many blog posts, just skim through and you will know this is good. This not might not be that worth of my time,
yeah,
and that we have to do. I believe that. And again, as you see more and more like application like ChatGPT becoming popular, it becomes very easy for you to create more articles, right? And those articles
absolutely.
will have a beautiful abstract, a beautiful introduction, some content, and a beautiful ending, right?
Yeah.
And you can start, okay, like this is the beautiful content from ChatGPT. Let's go in the middle of it, read the main content, and then skip the rest. So we have to start doing those things.
You brought out a very interesting point, and I think it correlates very well with how the creator economy has boomed in the last 2 to 3 years. Uh, it definitely boomed, one, because of pandemic, because people were at home, didn't know what to do, and they started, like, doing something with their phones and with their laptops and trying to share the information with the world.
Yeah.
But especially since 2022, and with ChatGPT, came a lot of other toolkits which I also like used, which was around like generating images, or generating small b rolls and all those kind of things, which are not perfect. Like, still there's a lot more work going on in that space, but that sort of boosted the creator economy in how easy it was to put your content out there, and how fast it was to put your content out there. And you didn't have to be, somebody who's perfect with their English. You didn't have to be somebody who's great with their creative writing. You can just use basic thought process that you have and draft out an amazing blog post, as you mentioned, right? Like, it's just become so easy, and that sort of showcases in the creator economy on how it's growing really, really fast.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this is also an opportunity. So maybe I'm giving you a startup idea to any person listening. So let's say if LLMs is helping create 40 different articles and feeding your LinkedIn, maybe create a agent LLM which can read 40 articles and summarize you for like in like 5 lines. So it's both ways, right? Technology creates a problem and the technology solves the problem.
So now that we know, like, how do you sort of refine your day in learning, tell us more about what do you do outside of work? What are your hobbies? What keeps your mind fresh?
I think it's very important for us to do things outside because it's a bubble, right? AI is a bubble. The more you keep reading about, you think this is life. So you need to have hobbies. So for me, I mean, I have a lot of hobbies. I love dancing. I do some Bollywood dance. So if
Oh,
somebody is in SF, yeah, SF, you can completely like come. I also sometimes teach Bollywood dance class, like easy beginner ones. So yeah, we can completely dance. But it's
that's
very
cool.
important, yeah, it's very important to like do these things because they help you take a step back, right? And I think like the second thing is traveling. You need to travel because if you live in Bay Area,
Yeah.
life feels like LLM, if like LLM or nothing, right? and
Yeah.
this, this even happened to me like last year. I was so much focused about this, then I went
Yeah.
to LA for like a weekend, and I
Yeah.
was on a beach, right? There are people enjoying the sun, paying cash to buy ice cream, and I was
Yeah.
surprised what is going on. Like people are using cash to buy things, like or what are you in Stone Age, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, these things are fine, like these things are is important, but it's also important to enjoy life, enjoy
Yeah.
what you have, right? To go out
Yeah.
there, live the real world, like
Yeah.
see the real sun, see the real people, not some created photos and videos.
Yeah. Uh, yeah. I think before we wrap up, do you have anything anything interesting that's on top of your mind that you want to like share with the audience. It could be like one of your predictions of what's going to happen. Like, how do you be positive about what's happening?
Yeah, so I think what's happening is like a space race right now, right? Every company wants to put their best LLM out there. And yeah, but I think like we have to start thinking beyond that just one LLM thing. I think the future is actually agentic behavior, where the LLMs can interact and talk. And you will be seeing a future where all of us will have like personal agents, right? So I think it's a good time we can start like documenting our data somewhere, so that if that day comes, we can train our own personal agents, and which can make our life much more easier,
Yeah,
right? And I have heard some people who get a bit scared about this concept, because it's like, oh, when these come, like what job will we have? No, the reality is that these agentic like, kind of machines will help you do more jobs. For example, let's say if your itinerary is to like, let's say book Uber, go to work, do certain things, come back, and then let's go to a restaurant, book something. These can all happen with your agentic model. Like it can book Uber for you, it can, like go to the restaurant, I mean, like
yeah,
book the reservation and stuff. So that's where I think the world is partially heading. And the speed, it's hard to guess. Like the curve, how fast it will get. My predictions are we'll get there very soon, and we will see a lot of like infrastructure around that agentic behavior. So right now the world is not mm, ready for it. So we see a lot of investments in that behavior, agentic behavior. So yeah, that's what I'm thinking. And yeah, like I think as human beings we should not be too concerned about it. We should start like just sitting back and enjoying it, right? Like
yeah,
read as new things come. There's two things: you can be like hyperactive and do something like ahead. I don't think it's required. I think just sit back, relax, read, let's see what comes next. And yeah, just catch the wave. Like when it comes, do it. And I'm quite sure like this is gonna
yeah,
transform the world the way we see. I think like as Sundar Pichai once said, like AI is like a fire. Like our
yeah, it
generation
is.
the luckiest. And imagine how lucky we are, right? Like all these algorithms which you mentioned about perceptrons and stuff, they came in 1940s, right?
Yeah,
It came in 1990s. We had to wait for almost 70 to 80 years for the
yeah,
GPUs to be available, which could bring meaning to these like perceptrons and data. So
yeah,
we are in a very like fortunate time of the
yeah,
century of the humankind.
yeah,
But I also feel that one more thing is
yeah,
robotics. I think AI is one, right? But the amalgamation of robotics with AI or with LLMs, that's something I'm very excited about. I think that's when you will see things like a robot can clean your house, or it can do
yeah.
laundry for you, or it can do dishes for you. I really wish that we jump to that stage as quickly as possible, because that's when we actually showcase. Right now, I mean, we are using LLMs for like to code complete, right? I think that's like not the best use case or the best way to highlight LLMs, right? It has to be when you start robots doing things for you.
Yeah, as we wrap up, like tell us one last thing. What's your favorite movie, documentary, or book? It can be about AI or not about AI, but something that maybe you can like give as a giveaway to people.
Yeah, I actually choose two movies. So the one will be The Social Network. This is a funny
Uh-huh.
thing. I don't know if you have you heard about the movie Social Network.
I've seen it, yeah.
Yeah, so just for context, it claims to be based upon Zuckerberg's life, but Mark Zuckerberg never acknowledges, like, it's completely fiction. But I don't know, I found the movie very fascinating, and it helped to understand like how this industry works. It
Works, yeah.
talks about investments, about like how you make things, how you people bring people to the board. But my absolute favorite, for some weird reason, is the movie The Godfather. So The Godfather is a real classic. It came in 1960s.
Yeah.
You have to watch it. That's all I can say.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
What about you?
I'm sure
What's your
people are
movie?
my favorite movie, I mean, it sort of like changes every time, but one of the movies that I saw recently, and this was an accident, I saw this movie called Pod Generation on a flight because there was nothing else to do, and that was the only movie that was available. I don't think it became a hit. Uh, Probably because not a lot of people understood what the movie was about. But this movie basically has Emilia Clarke in it, and they talk about this futuristic world where people are really busy with their works, and they have actually portrayed an AI assistant really well. So every person has like this their own like personal AI assistant on their desks who's able to like do everything. From like they have the vision capabilities to see that you're stressed, so the AI assistant takes the right kind of steps to like help you go through it. There is an AI therapist who are able to like using multimodal sensors able to like grasp different feelings that you have, your facial expressions, what you're saying, your history, all of that, and like they're able to like help you from like a therapy perspective. And what was the most interesting and fascinating thing, and which I sort of like relate with the current era, so they basically show a world where everybody is living in this digital spaces, that when they have to like go for a nature trip, that's also available in a pod. So you have to like, if you want to like experience what's a tree or what's a plant, you have to like book yourself a ticket to this pod. So that was very interesting and dark reality. It felt like one of the like Black Mirror episodes, but it was pretty fascinating. Like, that's probably not very relatable to a lot of people, but if you're like from the tech space, you'll definitely relate to it. You'll see very small examples of how they have shown a very hyper realistic future, but somewhere I feel like we can get there if we don't somewhere pause or like somewhere reflect back on what we're doing.
So I'll say like I think like sometimes I'm feel very blessed. Like no, I'm from India. I've seen a lot of Indian movies, Bollywood, and also see like Hollywood movies.
Yeah.
So recently I saw two movies back to back.
Yeah.
In the first one, there was Megan Fox.
Uh-huh.
So Megan Fox was a robot, right?
Okay.
And in the second movie, there was this girl, I think Kriti Sanon.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, and she was a robot in Bollywood movie.
Yeah.
So the one in Bollywood, the robot Kriti Sanon, she's sweet, she's loving, no, she's dancing, she falls in love with a guy, five songs, everything is happy and you come to Hollywood where there is Megan Fox as a robot, right?
Yeah.
And then she turns jealous. She wants to hurt the family. She wants a guy but for herself. So
Yeah.
I just like love seeing the way like people take on these concepts, right? So
Yeah.
Bollywood takes on this concept of robots more like fun, right? And you come to Hollywood, same concept of robot is like, oh, like she's dark, she's gonna hurt your family, she would want
Yeah.
you for herself, she's gonna use all
Yeah.
the knowledge she has. So this is how
Yeah.
like things work. Like it's perception, and I'm very happy we saw
Perception, yes.
two sides of the same robot concept in two
Yeah.
different industries in same
Yeah.
year. So I really recommend like this. Like information changes the way you think, right?
Exactly. Absolutely. I 100% agree. It's all perception, right? Like how facts are presented to you, that sort of like plays to how you start believing certain things. Thanks a ton for taking out time for this. And I'm sure people are going to enjoy your perspectives. I'm sure people are going to go to the description and like read the recommendations of the movies and books that you've given to people. So thank you. Thank you so much for that.
Yeah, thank you so much, and thanks for your time, Ashwarya. You're doing an amazing job. I have been following you on LinkedIn for quite some time, also on YouTube. So thank you for this amazing job. Keep going. Kudos.
Well, that wraps up our enlightening conversation with Pritish. I hope you found today's discussion as fascinating as I did. For all the resources, tools, and articles that we discussed in today's episode, make sure to check out the description below. If you enjoyed this deep dive into LLMs, open source AI, and the future of machine learning, please hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications to stay updated on the future episodes. We have got some amazing guests lined up that you don't want to miss. A special thanks to Pritish for sharing his valuable insights and experiences with us today. Until next time, this is Ctrl Alt AI, where we decode the future one conversation at a time.